just got a whole load worse for Meghan Markle because her sister Samantha ain't going anywhere.
I do believe because there are no delivery certificates.
Before this story reaches fathers, documents, hospitals, and rewritten timelines, it begins with one woman, Samantha Markle. For years, she found herself dismissed, pushed aside, painted as the jealous sister with something to gain. But Samantha wasn't chasing attention, she was chasing accuracy. Samantha became the first person to declare something wasn't right about Meghan's age, and unlike rumors that swirl online, her warnings came with the kind of certainty only a sibling possesses. She didn't shout or speculate, she simply stated facts, dates, memories, family moments that couldn't be twisted or polished for cameras. Pointing directly at the timeline, she declared, "Look closer, none of this adds up." For years, her voice went ignored, but now everything she revealed is resurfacing piece by piece, matching evidence the world never supposed to notice. When Thomas Markle, her own father, later stepped forward and confirmed that every detail Samantha had shared rang true, the ground beneath Meghan's carefully protected image began to shake.
In my opinion, she would still be a waitress if it wasn't for Dad.
This scandal comes as no surprise. Speculation about the children has been simmering for years.
Samantha didn't create this mystery, she simply refused to let it stay buried. Becoming the first person willing to break the silence, she created the initial crack in what seemed like a perfect story, and once she started talking, other pieces began falling into place. Thomas's memories opened up a whole new set of problems involving numbers that just don't make sense when he started sharing them. Meghan Markle's official birthday appears everywhere as August 4, 1981, showing up in palace records, official biographies, and media reports where it gets treated like an undisputable fact. Growing celebrity brought something that bothered Thomas as he noticed interviews where Meghan talked about her age didn't match up with the family milestones he clearly remembered. Her stories about acting jobs, school experiences, and childhood events seem to be happening at the wrong times. And once you start questioning dates, you can't stop looking at the bigger picture. Thomas's recollections didn't match the numbers being repeated around the world, and for the first time, people close to Meghan started quietly asking the same uncomfortable question: was Meghan Markle actually born in 1981? If the answer turns out to be no, then everything that followed, the Hollywood career, the royal wedding, the pregnancies, gets built on a foundation that doesn't exist. This wasn't just a gut feeling anymore, it had become a math problem that the palace couldn't solve, and the answer came from a source nobody expected. March 1997 held an old magazine sitting untouched in archives for decades that would change everything. Back then, teenagers read 17 magazine the same way kids today scroll through TikTok, looking for inspiration, stories, and glimpses into the world they hope to enter someday. Buried deep inside that issue on page 90 sits a small printed list. Nothing flashy or attention-grabbing, just names and ages of young women trying to get noticed in the industry. Hidden in that list were two words that would shake everything. Meghan Markle, age 21. Not 15, not even close, but 21. Official records claim Meghan's birth year as 1981, which would have made her 15 in March 1997. But this magazine, published, printed, sold, and saved long before she became a duchess, declares she was 21. That creates a 6-year difference, not a small typo or random mistake, but a number frozen in ink. Think about what this means, because this magazine exists completely separate from royalty, PR teams, or biography editors. Written before anyone cared about Meghan Markle's age, before anyone had any reason to change anything. Yet there it sits, a public document placing her birth year around 1975 or 1976, not 1981. People rediscovered that page, and it didn't just raise questions, it shook the entire foundation of her story. This wasn't a minor discrepancy, but evidence of a completely different life, one where Meghan wasn't a 20-something breaking into Hollywood, but a woman approaching 30 trying to make it in a youth-obsessed industry. Everything changes about how we understand her career, her choices, and her timeline, which forces us to ask, if this proves accurate, why would her official age be different? By now, the puzzle has created two completely different portraits that refuse to fit together. Version 1 presents the palace-approved Meghan Markle, born August 4, 1981, making her 44 in 2025. Appearing everywhere and getting repeated so consistently that it feels permanent, like it's been carved in stone. Version 2 emerges from Thomas Markle's first-hand memories, Samantha Markle's matching claims, and that stubborn 17 magazine page. Meghan isn't a millennial actress in this version, but a woman born around 1975 or 1976, making her nearly 50 today. Here's where this investigation becomes something much bigger, because if one of these birth years proves wrong, then which timeline has been built around the false information? Which details got added to support the lie? Which parts were deliberately removed? And why was the world never shown what's hidden underneath the official story? Identity puzzles like this force us to examine the next part of her story, one that depends almost entirely on age, medical history, and timing, the pregnancies. That's where the inconsistencies get even more obvious. Age isn't just a number in royal life, it's a critical piece of medical history, especially when pregnancies become part of the story. Meghan and Prince Harry announced they were expecting Archie, and the world celebrated what seemed like a fairy tale happening in real time, smiling photos, glowing appearances, and a carefully managed narrative of joy and new beginnings. But the timeline becomes more than confusing when you look at the medical reality. Birth year 1981 would have made Meghan 37 when pregnant with Archie, which already places her in what doctors call the geriatric pregnancy category, a clinical term for mothers over 35. Actually being born in 1975 or 1976 means she wasn't 37 during that pregnancy but 42 or 43, and that changes everything medically. Doctors treat pregnancies completely differently when the mother passes 40, with more monitoring, more evaluations, and more protocols that must be followed to keep both mother and baby safe. Here comes the first major red flag, the royal birth story. Harry described in his memoir doesn't match the medical reality for someone in Meghan's risk category, regardless of which birth year you use. Harry painted a picture of a peaceful, candlelit hospital room with birthing balls, calm music, and an easy recovery. But sources familiar with Portland hospital procedures say this type of setup would never be approved for a high-risk mother. Every medical record shows that Meghan's age, whether 37 or 43, puts her firmly in the high-risk category. Suddenly, the pregnancy story becomes more than a joyful announcement. It becomes a medical question that doesn't have good answers. Every birth follows a natural rhythm: labor, delivery, recovery, but the timeline given for Archie's birth doesn't just move quickly, it defies the basic limits of medicine. Harry's account claims Meghan delivered Archie, received 2 epidurals, recovered, and got discharged from the hospital all within 2 hours. 2 hours total. Consider this fact: the drive from Portland Hospital to Frogmore Cottage alone takes about an hour, sometimes longer depending on traffic. Everything else, the labor, the actual delivery, the recovery time, the medical monitoring, and all the discharge paperwork would have had to happen in just 1 hour. Medically, this becomes impossible because after receiving an epidural, mothers can't walk immediately since their legs are numb. Blood pressure must be monitored, vital signs need to stabilize, and doctors have to ensure there are no complications from the procedure, and this process takes hours, sometimes 6 to 8 hours minimum. Sources have quietly suggested that Meghan showed early signs of preeclampsia during her pregnancy, a serious condition that requires even more careful monitoring. If that proves true, she wouldn't have been discharged quickly at all. She likely would have been kept for observation for several hours, possibly overnight. Timeline collapses completely even before considering travel time because the story asks us to believe that a high-risk mother with epidurals could deliver, recover, and be driven home faster than most people can watch a single TV episode. Placing this alongside the age mystery makes the picture even darker because if the age got changed and the birth timeline doesn't work, then we're not looking at mistakes anymore, we're looking at a story that got deliberately crafted to hide something. All the pieces now lie scattered across the table. A father's quiet confession, a magazine page frozen in time, 2 timelines that can't coexist, and a birth story wrapped in calm when medical facts suggest chaos. None of these details scream for attention or hit you over the head with drama, they just sit there quietly, stubbornly refusing to disappear. Stepping back to look at the whole picture reveals something that isn't loud or flashy but deeply unsettling. What emerges starts to look like a life story that didn't simply unfold naturally but got carefully managed, adjusted, refined, and rewritten in permanent ink while the original pencil marks underneath were systematically erased. Once you see the contradictions in age, medical timelines, and pregnancy details, you realize something important: fairy tales don't fall apart this easily under scrutiny. Real stories do. Real stories have rough edges, inconsistencies, and details that don't match no matter how much polish gets applied. Meghan Markle's story shows those rough edges beginning to tear through the polished surface. Maybe that's why Thomas Markle finally decided to speak up. Maybe that's why the magazine page matters so much. Maybe that's why the birth story feels constructed rather than lived. Behind the royal glamour, behind the palace announcements, behind the elegant photographs, there appears to be a quieter truth. A timeline that got rewritten, a narrative that got adjusted, and a story that got rebuilt to fit the desired image instead of reflecting reality. What nobody talks about becomes the brutal reality. Meghan faced as a biracial actress trying to make it in Hollywood during the early 2000s. Sources close to the industry reveal that age discrimination represented just one layer of an impossible system designed to crush dreams. 2015 interviews show Meghan herself admitting that agents would literally tell actresses to lie about their age at auditions. "Agents would tell me to fib about my age," she revealed, describing how the entertainment industry pushed women to make these choices just to survive. But for someone like Meghan, the pressures grew even more complex because she was already fighting what she called being ethnically ambiguous, not black enough for black roles, not white enough for white ones. Industry insiders say that adding age to this equation would have made her virtually unemployable in a system obsessed with youth. Career trajectory timing makes sense when you examine it closely, because if she was actually born in 1975 or 1976, she would have been approaching 30 when she was still getting briefcase girl jobs on Deal or No Deal. For a woman in Hollywood, 30 was considered career death, especially for someone already fighting racial stereotypes. Former casting agents, speaking anonymously, remember how Meghan would sometimes joke about tailoring parts of her biography to suit the image she needed to project. At the time, it seemed like typical Hollywood survival tactics, but now those casual comments take on a much darker meaning. High school graduation photo significance becomes even more apparent when you see how it fits into this timeline. Meghan graduating in 1995 wearing a cap that said 95 and being 18 at graduation would place her birth year around 1977, exactly matching what sources have been quietly suggesting for years. While everyone focuses on magazine articles and family claims, there's a digital trail that's been hiding in plain sight through social media archives, early IMDb listings, and casting agency records that paint a picture not matching the official narrative. Technology experts have discovered that Meghan's early online presence contains subtle inconsistencies that suggest someone was managing her digital footprint very carefully. Old cache versions of industry websites show different ages listed at different times, almost as if someone was testing which version would work better. Northwestern University's own digital archives provide damning evidence through Professor Harvey Young, who taught Meghan in 2003 and specifically remembered discussing race and identity with a person who's 21 inches during spring semester. Meghan being born in 1981 would have made her 21 during her sophomore year, not her senior year. This detail proves crucial because it means either Professor Young misremembered the year they had class together, or Meghan was older than her official records claimed. Young specifically mentioned her maturity and awareness about racial identity, suggesting someone with more life experience than a typical college student would have had. Even more telling becomes what didn't make it into official records. Meghan's portrait wasn't featured in Northwestern's 2003 yearbook with the rest of her graduating class, despite being actively involved in campus activities. Yearbook editors typically only exclude photos when there are age or eligibility questions that haven't been resolved. Sorority records add another layer of complexity since Kappa Kappa Gamma has strict policies about age verification for new members, yet somehow Meghan's records from that period remain unusually sparse compared to her sorority sisters from the same years. Royal protection protocols demand thorough background checks that would make CIA vetting look casual by comparison, yet somehow these age discrepancies slipped through completely unnoticed, or worse, got deliberately ignored. Intelligence sources familiar with royal security procedures describe a process that typically takes months and involves cross-referencing dozens of databases, interviewing hundreds of contacts, and verifying every detail of a person's life story. Professional investigators trained to catch exactly these kinds of inconsistencies somehow missed a magazine article that amateur researchers found in minutes. Palace insiders reveal that Harry's relationship moved unusually fast through the normal security checkpoints. Typically, serious romantic interests undergo preliminary screening before any public appearances, yet Meghan was appearing at official events while background checks were supposedly still ongoing. More concerning becomes the response when family members tried to raise questions. Both Thomas and Samantha Markle attempted to contact palace security with concerns about discrepancies in Meghan's background, only to be told their input wasn't needed or wanted. Former royal protection officers, speaking anonymously, describe an atmosphere where questioning Meghan's background was actively discouraged. Staff members who raised concerns about inconsistencies in her story found themselves reassigned or pushed out entirely. This suggests either a catastrophic failure of royal security systems or deliberate decisions to ignore red flags for political reasons. Either scenario raises serious questions about the monarchy's ability to protect itself from infiltration by people with hidden agendas. What makes this story even more troubling becomes how quickly and efficiently contradictory evidence gets buried or explained away whenever it surfaces. Media organizations that initially reported on age discrepancies suddenly stopped investigating after receiving pressure from palace communications teams. Journalists who continued pursuing the story found their access to royal events revoked and their sources drying up overnight. Academic institutions that might have contradictory records face enormous pressure to keep quiet. Northwestern University officials refused to discuss any details about Meghan's enrollment, citing privacy laws that normally wouldn't apply to such basic verification requests. Even family members who try to speak truth face coordinated attacks on their credibility. Thomas and Samantha Markle found themselves portrayed as money-hungry troublemakers in media coverage that seemed suspiciously uniform across multiple outlets. Legal pressure becomes another weapon in this arsenal. People who publicly question official narratives suddenly find themselves facing lawsuits or threats of legal action that most individuals can't afford to fight. Social media platforms have quietly removed or suppressed content questioning Meghan's age, with posts disappearing and accounts getting suspended for sharing the very evidence we've discussed in this investigation. Documentary evidence that contradicts official timelines has a habit of disappearing from online archives. Cached versions of web pages get scrubbed, digital records get modified, and physical documents become mysteriously unavailable for inspection. Evidence continues mounting from multiple directions through family memories, archived documents, academic records, and medical timelines that don't align with the official story. What started as whispers from a father and sister has grown into a comprehensive case study of how public narratives can be constructed and maintained even when they don't match reality. Whether Meghan Markle was born in 1975, 1976, or 1981 may seem like a small detail, but it represents something much larger. The power to rewrite personal history in an age where we thought everything was permanently recorded. Someone successfully maintaining a false age for decades while building careers, relationships, and ultimately joining one of the world's most scrutinized families forces us to question what else we accept without proper verification. Investigation reveals how easily official narratives can be created and maintained when the right systems are in place. From Hollywood casting agencies that encouraged age manipulation to university records that somehow lack crucial documentation to medical timelines that defy basic protocols, each piece suggests a level of coordination that's both impressive and deeply concerning. Royal security failure raises questions about how someone with potential false documentation could pass through the most thorough background checks in the world. Either investigators missed obvious inconsistencies or they chose to ignore them, both scenarios undermining confidence in the monarchy's protective systems. Broader implications stretch beyond one person's birth certificate because this case demonstrates how vulnerable our institutions are to determined deception. Birth certificates, school records, medical files, all the documents we rely on to verify identity and background can apparently be manipulated or misrepresented if someone has the knowledge and resources to do so effectively. Looking ahead, this story remains far from over because legal experts suggest that if the age discrepancy can be proven definitively, it could trigger investigations into document fraud, immigration violations, and potentially even questions about the legal validity of the royal marriage itself. Markle family members have hinted that the age issue represents just the beginning of what they're prepared to reveal. And if Thomas and Samantha have been holding back more explosive information, this breakthrough might be the signal they've been waiting for to release everything they know. Story isn't ending here but evolving into something that could reshape how we think about truth, identity, and accountability in an era of managed public personas. Investigation continues, and with each new piece of evidence, the questions only get bigger and the potential consequences more severe for everyone involved.